What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. This is Faraz Siddiqui. I'm here with Zach Rizzuto. We're going to go over Week 10 buys, Week 10 sells. It's the home stretch. Got a couple weeks before the playoffs begin. And, this is about that time before the trade deadline's over in your fantasy football leagues. A lot of trade deadlines are over Week 11, right? So Week 11 might be the last time you're able to trade. So this is the time, this week and next week. The last opportunity that most leagues are going to get to make trades to help you win that fantasy championship, make your way to the playoffs, make that playoff push. So let's get it. Let's get right into it, man. I'm thinking about any sort of news that has come up over the last 24 hours. I don't really think there's much to talk about.
No. I mean, besides maybe Odell, where he's going to go, but we could talk forever about where he's going to go. There's really no knowing.
I mean, it doesn't, like we hit on that a little bit yesterday. We don't really know, like, where he's going to go. Like, there's not really any firm reports about it, in terms of where he might end up. So we'll see. It's an open-ended thing for now. And by the way, like, if you're here live in the on YouTube, you could throw your trade questions in the comments here, and we're going to try to get to some of these questions today. So, just to kind of get some like actionable trade advice, we'll kind of hit on those trades as we go. All right.
Yeah. And with trades, the trade deadline looming, we talked about, this is how you make the playoff push, but this is also how you save your season. If you can't, if you haven't done well up to this point, if you're on the edge of being a competitor, say you're 3-6, I think are the records right now, or 4-5, this is how you save your season before you go over the edge. Because once you get that 7th loss, that's kind of it. You have a very low chance of making the playoffs at that point.
Yeah. And, if you have a really, really good record, you might want to focus on those long-term moves. If you have buying guys like Hollywood, maybe buying guys like Jamar Chase, maybe, obviously those are high risk moves, right? Because does Jamar Chase end up on IR, right? Does Hollywood come back healthy? Those are high risk moves. And if you have a really good team and you're rolling, you might want to just like chill out, right? And just like keep it going, because those are high risk moves that could definitely win you a championship, no doubt about it. So, but it depends how risk averse, or pro risk you are, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's get right into it, man. Let's get into my first buy.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm very passionate about this one. Okay.
All right.
I'm buying Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
Again, I feel like I've been talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like I've been telling you guys to buy Amon-Ra St. Brown for maybe a month or more now. And that's because I still believe in buying Amon-Ra St. Brown. You still got it. You still have an opportunity to. And I think it's going to happen big time for Amon-Ra St. Brown over the last, month or so, for the rest of the season. I think Amon-Ra is going to be a wide receiver 1. Okay. Yeah. Last week, the Lions were in a positive game script, right? Not something they're going to find themselves in very often, right? Amon-Ra had a 35% target share this past week, had a 76% air yard share this past week. Okay. 10 targets, 9 targets, no TJ Hawkinson the rest of the year, a banged up DeAndre Swift the rest of the year. Maybe what happened the last time he was in these circumstances? Like, do you remember what happened? Like, it was a crazy finish to the year.
Yeah.
And on a per route basis, 32% target share per route run. There's only one player who has a higher target per route run than him, and that's Tyreek Hill. He's going to have a monster finish to the year. And there is such a wide open opportunity to buy a rest of season wide receiver 1. It's not even funny. Like, he is, in my opinion, he is the number 1 buy at wide receiver.
I agree. Everything you just listed off, I do think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a buy. I'm not exactly sure what his ceiling is going to be. Obviously he looked really good at the end of last season. It was similar circumstances like you just said, but the offense still isn't that good. And we know Amon-Ra St. Brown is good. And earlier in the season, I was very happy to do that, but he's getting the targets. The production isn't matching up just yet. So I want to see I want to see an actual good game before I say he's, the buy of like maybe the rest of the season.
Once he has the good game, Zach, you're
Yeah,
not
you
going to be
can't
able to buy him.
You can't buy. Yes,
You
that's
got to
true. I
make these
hear you.
predictions
This is the thing.
before they happen, because once
Yes.
they happen, he's not going to be as cheap as he is right now. The types of start sit questions that I've been getting around Amon-Ra St. Brown, the types of questions that lump him with other wide receivers, that I'm just like, really? Start Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like,
Yeah,
I
no,
understand the
there's no
production
question.
wasn't there last week, for example, but last week Jamal Williams had how many carries on the ground? Like, they were
24.
actually in a positive game script. Like, that ain't gonna happen with the Lions with how bad their defense is.
Yeah, the defense is bad. It looked better against the Packers, but those are the Packers. The thing that kind of concerns me is that Jared Goff looks bad again. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't look as good as he was even, last season when he was propelling Amon-Ra St. Brown to those finishes. And, earlier in the season when he had that big game, the Lions offense as a whole has cooled off. It's not really that high scoring unit. I think it was like number 1 in scoring and it was number 32 in defensive scoring allowed. So that was like, fantasy heaven right there for Lions players. But it's come down to earth pretty bad recently. I'm not a humongous fan of the way that it's looked, which is kind of making me a bit leery. I know that Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a stud. Yes. I think he can be a wide receiver 1 the rest of the way. But I'm not sure what his ceiling is going to be, especially with the production on offense being the way it was. They just won a game with 15 points, and they're the worst defense. I don't think that's going to happen a whole lot. I could see them going down. They've had a couple ugly finishes, notably against New England and Dallas, but those are 2 good defenses. I think that he has it in him, but you're much more confident in him recapturing that form that he had last season. I'm not as confident. You can buy him, but I think this is more of a luxury move. This isn't something that you are going to make. This isn't a move you're going to make if you're just trying to upgrade from a guy like, say, I don't know, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I'm looking at these underlying metrics that he has, and it just points to, they all correlate to high-end wide receiver 1 type of numbers, and he's done it before. So that's the reason why I'm like, you know what, this usage is not matching to production here. Let's buy now.
Yeah,
all right.
There's reason to believe. I'm not saying that there's no reason to believe. We've seen him do it before. I don't want to come off as, a hater of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm just tempering my expectations. That's all I'm saying. I hear what you're saying too. I think the ceiling is there. I'm just
Zach's hesitation. Zach's hesitation. Yeah, I agree. And I think Zach's hesitation here tells me that it's going to be pretty easy to buy Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I thought you were going to say Zach's hesitation here is going to tell me that he's going to have a monster season and just put Zach to shame. Now that I said that, it's probably going to happen, but we'll see. I'm just tempering.
You don't have the opposite Midas touch. That's not what's going on here at all.
I did for Amari Cooper in week 3, was it? Yeah.
That's all right. That's a small sample size.
Yeah, small sample size.
Small sample size there. All right.
Yeah.
Let's get into one of your buys next.
Yeah. So one of my buys is Mike Evans. And I know it's really easy to be like, why would we buy Mike Evans? The way the Buccaneers offense has looked and Tom Brady, the way they've looked this season so far hasn't been encouraging. And they just won on the last play in a very low scoring game against the Rams. And he's still not putting up massive numbers. There's a lot of stuff that you miss just by looking at the box score of this game and the way that they've been playing recently. He finished as a wide receiver 1 just once over the past 5 weeks. No touchdowns scored in the air since week 4 when he scored twice against Kansas City. In 2 seasons with Tom Brady at quarterback, Mike Evans' touchdown percent on receptions is 18.7%, which is ridiculous. That's super high, just touchdown machine type of numbers. And this season so far, it's 1/3 of that. And it's resting at 6.8% right now, which makes me think, yes, maybe Tom Brady has come back to earth a little bit, but Tom Brady hasn't been, the whole reason they're losing games. That's a huge difference. And we saw this a couple weeks ago with A.J. Brown. Regression is on the way. That was the case with A.J. Brown. What did he do when we said that, this positive touchdown regression was coming? We actually cited his exact stat, the same stat that I'm citing right now with Mike Evans, his touchdown percent, his career touchdown percentage. And he came out and he scored 3 touchdowns against the Steelers the week after. I'm not saying it's going to happen maybe that quickly and that on the nose this week, but it's definitely coming because this touchdown percent is way too low for the way that Tom Brady and Mike Evans have played together in the past. He's been targeted at least 11 times in each of the past 3 games too. 37 times total over the past 3 weeks. So it's not like he's not getting used. It's just like, why isn't he scoring touchdowns? If it feels like he hasn't been scoring touchdowns the way he usually does, it's because he isn't. So I think that we're going to see regression, hit him like a truck.
Yeah, and he's had pretty good success against the Seahawks in his career. He's been, he's played them a couple times and he's killed them
Yeah.
before. So, it's not the same players, obviously, but maybe he just, has an eye for kicking the Seahawks ass. So it could very well happen this week. And we've seen them in bunches to people, to players who, these regressions have been happening. Joe Mixon, right? Justin Jefferson. Who else? Who else just had a big, crazy? Oh, AJ Brown.
We talked about
right?
AJ Brown. Yeah.
It's been happening. So I'm with you, man. I think he's somebody that you could buy. Averaging almost 13 targets a game over the last 3, like you said. So it's a solid buy right there.
Consider this too. It's not like we're just saying that. You look at a guy that gets 15 targets, 11 targets, 11 targets in 3 straight games. You'd think that their price would be super high. He's got to be producing with that, right? No, 18 points, 9 points, no touchdowns. That is the perfect way. If people are just looking at the surface level, is he scoring a touchdown or not? Is he hitting 100 yards or not? If they're looking at that, then maybe they'll be like, you know what? Mike Evans isn't performing the way I wanted him to. And before that, he was quiet too. I mean, he hasn't been the most consistent receiver. He's had his blow up games, but when he doesn't show up, he doesn't show up. It's kind of evened out a little bit more, especially with this target share recently. He opened the season with 7 targets, 4 targets, and then he came back with 10 and then 8, 4. And like I said, these last 3 weeks, 15, 11, 11. It's a heavy passing attack for Mike Evans and the Buccaneers. I think that he is a screaming buy right now.
Let's move on to one of our trade questions here from Avant de Leon. First of all, A+ name. Even if you lost this trade, 10 out of 10 name. Avant de Leon. Sounds like a tequila brand. So traded. This trade already happened. Okay. Tua, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Swift for Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara, and Chris Olave. The question is, who won the trade? So that's Tua, Tyreek Hill, and DeAndre Swift for Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara, and Chris Olave.
That's a really close one for me. I don't know.
It's close, and I think Tyreek Hill is obviously, he's probably the best player in this trade, right? So, both teams can win depending on what they need. Like, for example, like if the person trading away Hill had, a couple studs at running back, let's say they had like, Saquon and, Travis Etienne, right? Yeah. And, trading away, Hill and trading away Kamara isn't the worst thing in the world, right? So with that, however, if I'm just going for like, apples and apples here, I might prefer the Kamara and Olave side, if I needed a running back, right? And Olave, I think, is a solid wide receiver too. I'm a guy who likes to always have the best player in a deal, right? Like I like to get the best player in a deal. So if I'm looking to upgrade, basically trading away Kamara and Olave for Hill, I would do that. However, Alvin Kamara is a high-end RB1 right now. If you're looking to potentially, lessen the risk surrounding Alvin Kamara, we talked about it. We don't think there's that much risk rest of the season because that video didn't look that great. So we have no idea like what happened in that video. But who are you leaning with here?
I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards the other side. And this is
what side is that?
Tua, Hill, and Swift, the winner. That's me. Because when I take it, I go position for position, and I just look at how they stack up to each other. Tua versus Lamar, Kamara versus Swift, and then Hill versus Olave. Hill versus Olave is a humongous. That's the easiest one right there. Hill is the number 1 wide receiver right now in fantasy football, and he's going to continue to do his thing. There's no doubt in my mind he has the highest ceiling and the highest floor at this point in time, even over Cooper Kupp right now, in fantasy football right now. So Tyreek Hill, very nice. I think he wins that. Swift versus Kamara is a little bit. It leans towards Kamara for me. Kamara has been a better
a little bit, just a little bit.
Okay, so if we're talking rest of season, it could be closer than you think. If Swift can get right, I think that they can produce, relatively similarly. But right now, Kamara is a much safer asset than Swift. So in that case, yes, Kamara wins.
I would argue that the delta between Alvin Kamara and DeAndre Swift is higher than the delta between Tyreek Hill and Chris Olave.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Yeah, Kamara is much better at this point.
DeAndre Swift is not going to be right for the rest of the year.
Yeah, he's a much better fantasy asset right now. So Kamara wins that part for me. But then I look at the quarterbacks and the way Lamar's been playing. I want to say Lamar, but he hasn't been producing very well.
Yeah.
So it's like
that's almost even, right? That's almost a wash.
Yeah, it has to be a wash because we know what Lamar's ceiling is, and that's what makes it so tough. Because it's always going to stick in the back of your mind when you're dealing with Lamar. It's like, okay, we know he can put up 40 points any week. He just has to have that game. Tua, his ceiling is very high, but his floor is also a lot lower, I think, than Lamar's, just because he doesn't have the rushing upside. So I think that's a wash. It's a very even trade for me in a vacuum. This is pretty even. If I had to pick, though, just my gut feeling, I'd take the Tua Hill stack. That's just me.
I think the Tua Hill stack has a higher ceiling overall.
Oh yeah, yep.
I would say that. I like it. That's a good one. Now, Hernandez is asking. I'm sorry, Aaron Hernandez. Dude, I'm so sorry, Aaron Henderson. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Like, this is a football show. My bad, dude.
It doesn't. It's funny because at a glance, profile picture.
It's funny. I don't know if Aaron found it funny though. Aaron, can you let me know in the comments if that was funny? I don't think you found it funny. That's just me though. My bad. Would you trade away Leonard Fournette for Amon-Ra St. Brown easily? This is like no question. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if these are the types of questions that we're gonna get around Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's why we're buying Amon-Ra St. Brown, because you don't have to spend that much to get him, right? Amon-Ra St. Fournette, someone I'm looking to sell. Aaron Henderson in the chat said, "I get that a lot." LOL. Oh, I hope not, man. I hope that's not true.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like, yeah, like I'm buying Amon-Ra, dude. And Fournette, he's on shaky ground. He's not a fantasy asset that I'm looking to buy. I'm looking to get rid of him if I can. So this is an easy one for me.
Yeah, I figured that one would be pretty easy for you because you're both you're an Amon-Ra truther, but you're also a Leonard Fournette hater. So I knew that would happen.
I am not a Leonard Fournette hater.
Oh, you're
hating how
Fournette
he's
hater.
being used.
Yeah.
Hey, hello. Excuse me. Hold on a second. Okay, I have Leonard Fournette on a lot of teams. Well, not anymore because I traded him away. But I drafted him in a lot of teams. I was into him this year. I'm so into you. I can't sing. But I was into Fournette coming into the year, but as the season went on, did not like what I've seen. So I'm moving on from him for sure. All right. Let's move into another one of my buys, and that's Dameon Pierce.
Oh, here we go.
Over the last 3 games, Dameon Pierce put up modest numbers. He's averaging only 14.6 PPR fantasy points per game. That's in fantasy points per game over the last 3 games. And his usage, though, reflects a running back who is being used at a much better rate than what his fantasy finishes have suggested. So he wasn't targeted this past week at all. But the 4 weeks prior, 6 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets. And his role, he didn't have the 2-minute offense before these past 2 weeks. And his role just dramatically changed over the last 2 weeks. And he got that 2-minute offense. He got the 2-minute role, which is going to be huge for a team who stinks, who is going to be down in a lot of games, right? They were in that Philly game, okay? But that's not going to happen that often, okay? That was a trap game for Philly, but Philly ended up coming out on top, but late in that game. Last 2 weeks, approaching 80% of snaps, running around on nearly 60% of dropbacks. So he's in line to get a lot more volume in the pass game moving forward. The Texans are going to continue to lose games. So he's someone who I think you can buy money back. And I think he's not necessarily considered an RB1, a low-end RB1. I'm viewing him as a low-end RB1 right now. And I think he's being considered as an RB2, like a every week RB2 that you start, maybe a high-end RB2. But I think there's a little bit of arbitrage there when it comes to Dameon Pierce, because over the last 3 weeks, if you're only averaging 14.6 PPR fantasy points per game, that's not a RB1, right? That's somebody who, you can start every week. That's Miles Sanders numbers right there, right? But you wouldn't consider Miles Sanders an RB1.
No.
So it's one of those things where like his role is a lot more valuable than what he's been outputting over the last couple of weeks. So if you're looking for one of those high-end running backs, he's somebody that I'm looking to buy. Yeah,
so he's like a sports car and a used car a lot. I think for me, that's the way I kind of look at him, because he is great. We look at
that
him.
Meme, right? It's that meme that you keep seeing.
Yeah,
that, like I don't know what kind of car it is, but it's like a banging like Rolls Royce or something.
Yeah.
like in this like dope house, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. I've seen that one, but I'm just saying that's what he is. You watch him run. Oh my God. He just looks like so explosive. It's like, how does this guy not have more touchdowns? And then you look, it's like, oh yeah, this used car lot that he's stuck on. It's the Houston Texans. That's the way it's going to be. So that's my problem with him. So he has earned himself a spot in my rankings, in between RB2 and RB1. He's like RB1.5. Like you have guys like Dalvin Cook. He's been producing, but he's been a little underproducing. I consider him as an RB1. He's not Miles Sanders, who is an RB2. But unless the touchdowns come, it's like he's going to put up 100 yards on the ground pretty easily every week, the way that they're using him. So he has a super nice floor, but he's really just stuck in this spot. I said, I'm calling him. He's my new RB1.5. That's the way I view him. So he's fine. He's going to be fine. And like I said, I've talked about this last week when I said to sell Dameon Pierce, and you said that you were buying Dameon Pierce. You're still buying Dameon Pierce. It's the touchdown upside that he lacks that makes me say he's not going to have the ceiling of other guys, but he's also not going to be as volatile as a guy like Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I think those touchdowns will come. I think he'll own like 65% of their touchdowns at the end of the year.
That's the way it should be with the guys that are on that offense at this point. Davis Mills, he should start throwing touchdowns. If Davis Mills starts throwing touchdown to Dameon Pierce, I'll move him up in the RB1. But right now, RB1.5.
RB1.5. I love it. All right, let's move on to one of your sells. Go for it.
All right. So one of my sells, and this one might be a bit controversial, just like my sell last week of Dameon Pierce. This week I'm selling Tony Pollard, and that might seem a little weird. You're not going to be able to move him individually. So I'm not saying that you're going to go offer, Tony Pollard for a guy like Dameon Pierce. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get that type of thing. And we're going to go back to our conversation we had last week's episode too. He's a fantastic side piece in a trade offer after his big game against Chicago. He was on bye, so, nothing really happened to his value. But Ezekiel Elliott is supposed to be back versus Green Bay. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. He's returning to practice this week. I think he's supposed to practice today. So we'll get reports and see how he's looking there. But he's supposed to be back. And if he does come back, he said he's going to be in a brace. He could be limited a little bit more. So that could leave the door open for Tony Pollard to kind of dominate this backfield a little bit more than he usually does. Leverage that uncertainty with what's going to happen to sell Pollard. Because with a 33-point performance, in the rear view now, and that's the last performance they had, the stock is really way up, and if Zeke, as soon as Zeke comes back and is healthy, he's going to start getting those money touches again, and Tony Pollard's going to go back to handcuff value. He's also yet to receive more than 16 opportunities in a game, Tony Pollard is, and we talked about that a little bit last week. The passing attack in Dallas is also heating up with Dak Prescott back, so I would take advantage of his value where it's sitting right now and, move him for a more secure asset player for you the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, and this goes back to what we talked about, right? Like the coaches even came out, his offensive coordinator even came out and said that, he's not an every down back, basically. Yeah. Like he's going to max out at, a certain number of snaps per game, which is not what you want to hear.
Yeah, I actually saw a report after the podcast. I actually came out and defended Tony Pollard. It was like, he'll be fine. He just has to keep getting that work, But I read the reports afterwards. The exact words, I think, of the running back coach was that he was gassed. And he was out of gas and he was tired that he couldn't keep going. So maybe I didn't think that would be a problem for an NFL player after just 14, 15 touches. But if that's the case, then yeah, maybe it's time, to sell Tony Pollard. I was a little taken aback by that report because I thought it was just a usage thing. That's how they were going to use him. But if it was actually, him being fatigued, that could be an issue.
It can be for sure. All right, let's get into a couple. What like Billy 80 is asking, what can I get for Pollard and Pittman Sutton? So if you combine Pollard and Pittman or Pollard and Sutton, can you get a wide receiver one? I don't think so. Think so. Now, can you throw an offer for Amon-Ra St. Brown? Yeah, sure. Like go for it. See what you can get. But I don't think you'll be able to get a solid RB2. Like maybe you can get Miles Sanders, right? Someone in that range. You might be able to get someone like that because right now Pittman and Sutton, they're really hard to sell, right? You can buy these guys pretty easily if you wanted to, but you can't really sell them like that. But Miles Sanders might be a luxury running back that some teams have as their RB3.
Yeah.
Right. You might be able to buy someone like that. You might be able to buy are there any other? It looks like he's looking for a wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
right? So receivers in that, wide receiver 2-ish tier that you can potentially buy with these two guys.
Yeah. So for me, I'm looking at it. If you want to talk about a running back you could buy, I thought about while you're talking about it was if you want to shoot for upside, I'd do a heat check and see if you can get DeAndre Swift, maybe. Just because once he's healthy, that could work. He's been letting fantasy managers down for a few weeks, and we're not sure what the outlook is for these next few weeks coming up. But once he's healthy, I think he's going to look good and much better than what Pollard or Pittman's combined is going to do for you. So I think that you could maybe shoot for Swift, do a heat check, see what they're thinking. If it's worse, if they want less, great. If they want more, I'd maybe, just lay off. But that kind of deal for me, if that was on the table, I would take it. And then for a receiver, I think with, Pittman, Sutton, and Pollard, I'd target a guy like DK Metcalf maybe. He's not producing in a huge way right now, but the offense is still very good in Seattle. They're going to be able to score plenty of points. And I think he scored a touchdown. Sorry, what's that?
That might be a little tough to do. That might be a little tough to do.
It might be.
But
you'll hear about me.
What about
Sorry,
what about a guy like
Pittman.
Chris Olave? Maybe like he's not as valuable as DK. Maybe I would aim high. Like I feel like that might be undoable. Also, not really doable. T Higgins maybe, a wide receiver that you can get for these guys. Alan Lazard, Brandon Ayuk. What about Gabe Davis? Would you sell Pollard and Pittman / Sutton for Gabe Davis?
I don't know. I don't think I would, because this is what happens. I think Pittman is Davis without the upside. You know what I'm saying? But the floor is valuable enough with Pittman, I think. And like I said, I'm going to talk about him in a couple minutes.
Why don't you just go for it, dude? We mentioned Pittman a couple times here. Just go for it.
All right. So another guy I'm buying, with Pittman, and I was talking about, I think Pittman is Gabe Davis without the upside, but at this point, the floor is much better than Gabe Davis. I'm buying Michael Pittman this week. The Colts offense, if you've been watching, it has hit rock bottom officially, and the only way left to go with 9 weeks left in the season is up. That's all the way they can go. Otherwise, it's going to be more of the same. We've seen the head coaching changes across the league, especially in Carolina. It revived the fantasy value of DJ Moore. I think it could do the same thing, maybe for Michael Pittman. Obviously, it's an interesting hire that the Colts brought in, but we'll see how it goes. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Even with dismal production, Pittman is still comfortably in the lead of Colts pass catchers with target share. He's at 22% last week. He had 39%, I think, share the week before. So things are looking good. It's not like anybody's creeping up on him, breathing down his neck and taking his targets away. There's a better chance that Matt Ryan can come off the bench and add some juice than not, I think. Because at this point, the Sam Ehlinger experiment is over. We've seen what we need to see. It doesn't look like he's the guy. I think the Colts are going to end up, targeting quarterback in next year's draft. I think that's going to be the way it's going to be. But with 9 weeks left to play, like I said, the only way to go is up. And Michael Pittman's still getting the targets. He hasn't completely sold you out. He's still catching a few passes each game and doing what he needs to do. If Matt Ryan comes back, I like him to kind of return to wide receiver 2 relevance. I think he could do that. If he's not a low end wide receiver 2, I think he'll find a nice little home as a mid wide receiver 2 if Matt Ryan comes back. So I'm buying Michael Pittman. His price is so low right now because the offense just has not been good.
That's really what it comes down to. Sometimes you got to kick the tires on guys who are just like have no value, that people they don't want anything to do with them. Yeah. However, when they're in a situation where they're going to be the target leader and they're good players and they're good talents, you might want to just buy them, right? Michael Pittman was doing his thing this year. He was leading them in targets. The week before with Sam Ehlinger, he had 40% target share. They're going up against the Pats last week. It's the worst possible young quarterback. So, it's one of those situations to buy. And I have a feeling that Matt Ryan's going to be back if Ehlinger can't get it done. Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to happen. I don't think they just let him struggle and the offense just completely lose it over the last, they still have 7 games left on the season, 8 games left on the season. So I wouldn't expect that to happen.
Yeah. It's too long an amount of time for them to just let Ehlinger flop around out there on the field. You know what I'm saying? I think that Ehlinger, if he's still out there, it's gonna kind of be edging on tanking territory for me, because they'll know that maybe they're just trying to cover up their tank as oh, we want to see what we have in Sam Ehlinger, and we'll let him fail for 8 weeks in a row, and that'll give us a bad record, and we'll go draft somebody else. Maybe that might be a little collusion right there, but I won't speculate. just something to consider.
Joshua Sanders is asking, Gabe Davis and Terrace Marshall for DK. Would that work? I doubt that will work, but you can try it.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work.
are very attracted to Gabe Davis' ceiling, and with Josh Allen's arm issues right now, it's going to be tough to sell Gabe Davis.
Yeah, and also with Terrace Marshall, yes, he's looked good for the past 2 weeks, but those are the only 2 good weeks he has in his career at this point. So it's that's recency bias. If that trade goes through, let me know. Message me on the Upper Hand Fantasy because I don't on the Upper Hand Zach because I'd love to know if that goes through. I don't think it's going to though.
Alan in the comments here is asking, how would you package Jonathan Taylor in a deal to upgrade at tight end? And I currently have Pitts. So here's how I would look at it. There's only one type of team that you can make this deal with, and that's a team who has 2 good tight ends. That's it. Like, if you're looking to upgrade at tight end, you need a tight end back. That means that you can only grab a tight end from a team who has 2 good tight ends. Like, look at teams who have a good tight end. Look at a team who has a good tight end plus, I don't know, Dalton Schultz, right? A good tight end plus
Gerald Everett.
I just said Gerald Everett.
Oh, sorry,
I said Dulcich maybe. Like, people might be okay with him. There's only a handful of teams that are going to have two tight ends, and no one's really going to say like, okay, give me JT and I'm fine with Pitts as my rest of season tight end, right? Like, most teams are not going to want to do that because most people realize how valuable the tight end position is, right?
Yeah.
Elias is just said Frymuth, right? Frymuth is another one. Maybe you have a good tight end and Frymuth, right? And then you can target one of those guys. So there might be only like 2 or 3 teams at most who have a couple tight ends on your roster that's going to be an upgrade over Pitts. I would try to grab the not so, and I want to go for the premium tight end that they have, but you go for their second tight end, and then you can add JT in there, get that second tight end, and then maybe get an RB2 back. That's kind of how you could probably do that. Maybe Dameon Pierce, right? Dameon Pierce plus Frymuth for JT and Pitts. I wouldn't make that deal. But let's say Miles Sanders, maybe something like that. Miles Sanders plus a pretty damn good tight end for JT and Pitts. And I use Miles Sanders as like the staple running back too.
Yeah.
Who like no one wants. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. So that's how I would approach it. When you approach it that way, the world becomes a lot smaller and you can kind of focus on the players that these teams have. And you'll realize pretty quickly that maybe only 1 or 2 teams will make a deal with you for JT and Pitts. Not many people want JT. Some people are willing to buy him low. He isn't too attractive right now, especially because we don't even know if he's going to play this week.
Yeah. And the ceiling to upgrade to, at tight end right now, whoever has Travis Kelce and whoever has Mark Andrews, they're not going to move off of them. They have their tight ends. They're not going to move them. They're the immovable objects at tight end. I think that your movable range comes in at, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz. That's like the ceiling.
If I had those guys, I'm not moving them either.
Well, yeah.
Especially for JT or Pitts.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like you're not going to be able to upgrade that much. I'm not sure what this guy in particular is valuing JT at. I don't value him that high. I don't think that he's.
You have to value him as like an RB2.
Yeah,
right now,
because his trade value, his value week to week is still RB1. In terms of his production value, but as a trade value, it's not going to be anything that high. I don't think that in this situation there are going to be any suitors for you that are going to give you what you want. That's just me.
Yeah, Jacob. Another question here: do I trade Dameon Pierce and JuJu for Amon-Ra and Kittle? Well, Jacob, that segments really nicely into one of my cells, and we'll get back to your question and we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, Jacob, I promise I won't forget. Actually, you know what? I'll keep it pinned here so I don't forget.
Yeah.
But let's talk about JuJu. I'm selling JuJu, and I've been talking about buying JuJu early on in the year, on multiple shows like this one. I think he's been on the buy show maybe 2 or 3 times already early on in the year, and I'm glad that worked out. But now I think it's time to sell, right? Like, you buy assets that are cheap, and when you think that the value is at a peak, you sell, right? And that's what I'm doing here. Since week 6, and that's 3 games for him, he's the wide receiver 6 overall in fantasy points per game. And do you guys believe that that's elevated, or do you think that's about right? I would assume that most people think that That's a little production. It's not really matching his underlying usage early on. It wasn't matching his usage early on in the year, right? And
Right.
it caught up big time over the last 3 games. And now you look at his underlying usage, and yes, he had this 12 target week this past game. And that's a great number to see on the game log. But Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 68 times. And Juju's target share over his last 3 games is 17%. That's 50th among wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. 50th, 5-0. Okay.
Yeah.
Last week, 18%, 22% target share, 12% target share. Those are the last 3 games. And those are the 3 games that he did good in. Okay. So, and you look at his air yard share. He's not being targeted down the field. 19% of air yards from Patrick Mahomes over the last 4 weeks. So I think Juju is likely to be productive the rest of the season, relatively, but you can take advantage of this extremely elevated value right now. Can you get Dameon Pierce for Juju? You get Ramondre Stevenson for Juju plus a little bit more, maybe, possibly. Can you get Amon-Ra straight up for Juju? Maybe. I didn't even mention Kadarius Toney joining this offense, right? Like he has a chance of earning some target share because he has done it in the past when he's on the field. And, that's just a cherry on top when it comes to this argument personally. But even without Kadarius Toney in this equation, I still think that Juju is a sell. And when you add him into the equation, you're like, I think it's a pretty good time to sell Juju right now because Kadarius Toney didn't see much of the field this past week, and he's going to start getting integrated into the offense.
Yeah. He's absolutely going to be starting to get integrated in the offense. And that's one of the biggest things for me that's saying sell JuJu Smith-Schuster. I agree. Because does anybody think that this production is sustainable on an offense? Obviously Patrick Mahomes, he's Patrick Mahomes. So he's going to be able to do whatever he needs to do. The guys are going to randomly show up, and have high output games or stretches of games where they do this. But you have now Kadarius Toney. Obviously Travis Kelce's there, and he's going to produce every week. He's going to get his targets. You have Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You have Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield. And that's running backs. And then Mecole Hardman suddenly is coming on out of nowhere and doing his thing. Obviously it's going to be hard to sell him. I'd say that he's a sell too. The way he's been producing it's been, unsustainable. So if you're talking about selling 2 Chiefs receivers, you could do that. But there are so many weapons in this offense now. Juju, even though he is looking more like the Juju that we came to know and love when he first started out in Pittsburgh, he was actually doing his thing. Even though he's looking better, I think that this is going to come back down to earth a little bit. He's going to have some more quiet weeks moving forward. He still has the upside just because of the offense. This is a high-scoring, high-powered offense. It's Patrick Mahomes, a quarterback. Anybody is liable to have a big week any week. But you're not going to be able to value him that high after a couple games. I think in these next few games, if he has a game or two that's quiet, it's not his value isn't going to come anywhere close. He's had 3 straight 20-plus performance point games, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, PPR. That's what it was. So, yeah, he's a sell.
So, when you go back to this question from Jacob, do I trade Dameon Pierce and Juju for Amon-Ra and Kittle? I'm okay with this. Now, if you need a tight end, like I understand this trade here, and I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, and, trading Dameon Pierce. I think Dameon Pierce is an RB1. I think Amon-Ra is going to be a wide receiver 1 as well. So, those 2 are very close for me, with Amon-Ra getting the edge, especially in PPR leagues. And Juju and Kittle, I can see that being a somewhat fair trade as well. As long as Kittle can stay healthy, he can continue to do his thing. It's going to be a good offense. They're going to have more red zone opportunities. I'm okay with this. If you don't have a tight end, I'm okay with this deal.
Yeah. And I know Kittle's been banged up a little bit, but don't let, injuries with Kittle, especially the short week-to-week injuries that he's kind of been dealing with, don't let that scare you, in this trade. I think that Kittle is still Kittle. He is going to be a high-end tight end for you at this point because, though, like I say this every week, the tight end landscape is just barren. So he has the upside. We've seen it from him to be able to be a high-end tight end 1. I think that trade's fair. You could do that.
Jason's asking, do I trade Stephon Diggs for Dameon Pierce and Amon-Ra St. Brown? Now, if you need a running back, I can see this, but I'm not trading Diggs. Now, this whole Josh Allen fiasco, right, with the arm. I was
about to bring that up.
Do you want to reduce your risk?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to reduce your risk here, Zach, are you pulling the trigger on this one?
So, okay, I'm looking at both ends of this deal. It looks like, okay, I'm moving on from Diggs for Pierce and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And the way that you've talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown for us, you're going to have a wide receiver 1 in Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Sure. But Diggs isn't that high-end top top two.
Yeah, no, Diggs he is he's a high end wide receiver one. Where Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think that even the way you've been talking about him, it sounds like he's going to be a high end wide receiver one. But I
I
think
think
that
he has that in his range of
range of
outcomes for
outcomes.
sure.
Yeah, I think that more likely to happen is just wide receiver one is a solid wide receiver one, which is still plenty good. That's the
Let's
only
say
thing.
Jason desperately needs a running back. Let's say he doesn't have a good running back and he desperately needs one. Like this might be a good deal.
Yeah. So if he needs a running back, yes, I would say you pull the trigger on this. But I am saying there's risk with Diggs right now because of Josh Allen. But at the same time, there's risk with Amon-Ra St. Brown because he hasn't put it together yet this season for me. I don't think.
Yeah, I get it. Let's see. Looking at a couple other trade questions here. Elias is asking, do I trade Josh Allen for AJ Brown? I have Justin Fields on my bench. Well, Elias, that is a great transition because one of my sells is Curtis Samuel. And I'm moving Curtis Samuel if I can, right? And while I can. He's been solid all year long, and that is going to help him with his trade value. Double-digit fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. Just had this boom game this past week and a great matchup out of the slot against Minnesota. And when you look at what he's done with Taylor Heineke under center, he's averaging only 5 targets a game. And that's without Jahan Dotson. What if he comes back? What if he earns some targets? A lot of the early season allure with Curtis Samuel was that he was very consistent, right? Especially in PPR leagues. He was getting close to double-digit targets a game, especially early on in the year with Carson Wentz. That hasn't been the case lately. So I think we still have a sell window here, and I think it's going to close shut pretty soon. Just like in this deal, he's not, but I think he's the perfect add-on in a deal to upgrade at running back or wide receiver, just like this deal. Elias, did you read my notes before this podcast? I think you did. So if I'm looking to get I don't know, Curtis Samuel and Miles Sanders for Dameon Pierce, maybe Curtis Samuel and Fournette for like a Dameon Pierce or Ramondre Stevenson, something like that, I would do that deal. And this deal right here, Josh Allen and Curtis Samuel for AJ Brown, if you have Fields, I'm actually okay with this.
Yeah. So this kind of harkens back to the conversation we had last week about where are we putting Justin Fields and would you trade them? And, we talked about we wouldn't put him over the top guys, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and I forget who the other guy was that we talked about. But yeah, I'm missing somebody. But we talked about this last week. This is kind of the move.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. This is kind of the move that for me, this is a move that if you have Justin Fields and you didn't draft him to be your QB1, and now suddenly he can be a QB1 for you. Josh Allen has the elbow thing going on now. I would move. I would move for this because this could be the put you over the top trade. If you have Curtis Samuel at wide receiver, you go slot in AJ Brown and still have Fields at quarterback after this trade. I think this is a huge power shift in your league at this point because you now have Fields coming up. He's healthy. He's looking a lot better. Josh Allen, yes, he's good. He's been a little bit more turnover prone, these past 2 weeks on top of his injury going on right now. We don't know what that's going to look like. So I would maybe, I wouldn't have thought I'd ever say this if this question was posed to me, before the season started, but I might be smashing the trade button on this one. I'm good with that.
Even before the elbow injury, to be honest with you, if he didn't have the elbow injury going on, I would definitely think twice for sure.
But that makes it easy. Yeah. The elbow
it makes it easier, definitely. Especially since he has Justin Fields too on the bench with that high upside.
That's the thing.
Final sell of the episode.
Yeah. Sorry, one more thing before we go. Nobody drafted Justin Fields to be their QB1. They drafted him for the potential that he has, and it's come through. So now you have 2 quarterbacks probably on your team that you can work with, make a decision with, and Justin Fields is so good, at this point that 9 times out of 10. The other quarterback you have on your roster is movable. And in this situation, Josh Allen can be moved. That's just what I was going to say. Yep. But, yeah, going in my last sell, and this one for me is pretty easy. It's Jeff Wilson. And I talked about selling Raheem Mostert last week. Dolphins running back seem to be doing it. The sell window closes on one Dolphins running back, Raheem Mostert, and it opens on another, which is Jeff Wilson. He had effectively 0 value. Just keep this in mind. Effectively 0 value after Christian McCaffrey got traded to San Fran, right? Not only the fancy guys gifted you a selling point with Wilson because he's on a new team, but he also put up a strong first effort in Miami. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they're setting records in the passing game. This is still a pass first offense. The backfield is not going to be strong enough to have, an RB1, a true RB1 producer. The high end, I think, for your production out of Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson is going to be mid RB2, maybe high end RB2 certain weeks. But this is pass first offense. The receivers are going to be doing the work. The backfield last week was perfectly split. Wilson had 9 carries, 3 targets. Mostert had 9 carries, 2 targets. And even though Wilson looked really good and better than Raheem Mostert last week, doesn't mean that's going to be the case next week. And I don't think either of them are going to be clearly used over the other because of their familiarity with McDaniel. I don't think McDaniel's going to do that. He'll be like, all right, we're not going to use Raheem Mostert because Jeff Wilson's looking a little bit better. I think they're all friends there. He's not going to throw them out of a job. I don't think that it's going to be ever, leaning one way heavily or the other at this point the rest of the season, because the focus is going to be on the passing game for the Dolphins. The running backs are going to be complementary to that. If they score a touchdown, good for them, but I think that's where their ceiling rests. I'm selling Jeff Wilson while you have the chance because, like I said, when you look at his value now, it's at least some, where before it was 0. If you didn't get rid of Jeff Wilson when he was traded, you got a little bit more value out of him by letting him sit on your roster for a week or 2.
I don't have anything to argue with about. I think that makes sense. It's possible that some people think that, he's going to completely take over, maybe get 70% of the work, and maybe not. No. Maybe they just sticks to 50-50, and Raheem Mostert stays healthy all year too. Right?
It's going to be 50-50. That is.
He's going to.
That's one of my mail it in. It's going to be 50-50. There's not going to be any clear RB1 in this backfield. They're going to be splitting it the whole way.
Corbin just sent a trade during the podcast. He sent a trade. Jacoby Myers, Jeff Wilson, Raheem. Good luck with that, Corbin.
Good luck with that.
All right. Mukshaf Tahir is asking, trade Dalvin Cook, Mooney, and Pickens for Waddle. It's a lot.
That's a little too much for me.
It's a lot. That's a lot for Waddle. I'll say this, though. I don't value Mooney and Pickens a whole lot. Okay?
Right.
So if you have a luxury at the running back position and you're trying to, just basically do a swap running back for wide receiver, why not just do Dalvin Cook for – this is Waddle. Why did I see Amon-Ra? Am I just seeing things because I want to see what I want to see?
Maybe. This episode has been about Amon-Ra.
I'm making this deal. I'm making this deal for Waddle. Like if you're just if you have a plethora of running backs, let's say Dalvin Cook is one of your 3 running backs, and 2 of them are great. All right, you're gonna have 2 left over 1-ish type of running backs.
Yeah,
I'm okay with this deal to get Waddle because Mooney and Pickens, like, who cares if you're getting Waddle back? And I look at this more like a kind of a 1-for-1 with Mooney and Pickens as like easy throw-ins.
Yeah, if you need to win, then maybe I go with that.
I need to win. We all need to win.
Well, yeah. But like I'm just saying, if you need a win, like you're desperate. The thing about for me is, Mooney could do better with Justin Fields playing the way he is. The offense has looked a lot better, and we haven't seen George Pickens yet with Claypool off the team, so he could end up, doing a little bit better than he has been doing. And Dalvin Cook, he's an RB1, so that's why I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit on that one. Waddle is very good, but the number 1 guy, at the higher floor is Tyreek Hill in Miami, and Jalen Waddle has kind of been the high ceiling guy. He's making money on the touchdowns. Hill is making money on the receiving yards. You could do that if you need to win, but I would pump the brakes just a little bit. I know you're just like sending it, but I'm pumping the brakes.
Do it. Just do it. Just do it. Sep Juice is asking, do I trade Amari Cooper for Amon-Ra St. Brown? Oh, wait, hold on.
And STH. Who's STH?
No idea. Never mind. Aaron Henderson again is asking, do I trade away Kyler Murray for Justin Fields?
This is tough.
1-for-1.
1-for-1. I feel like it's yes for me.
Aaron,
I think so.
Zach says yes.
I say yes, but this is my reasoning. Kyler Murray has been consistently solid. Justin Fields has the potential to be excellent, for fantasy football. Like solid and excellent. If you want to talk about winning weeks for you, Justin Fields, I think it's a better chance to do that than Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray hasn't looked like he did the past 2 seasons. he's still a QB1. Like, don't get me wrong. He's producing very well for you as far as, week to week, but the upside just is not Justin Fields. And I like upside. So I'd go with Justin Fields.
We got another trade question here from Philip. Trade Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, and Evan Ingram for Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, and Brandon Ayuk. Full PPR keeper league. First of all, just want to say, since this is a keeper league, and you're trying to win a championship this year, I wouldn't worry about it being a keeper league.
Yeah.
I would just treat it as in like you're trying to win this year and not really worry about it. But to get Diggs and Chase on the same team, that's like a championship winning move right there. Right? I understand the risk behind that. Like getting Cooper Kupp is way, less risky, right? And Higgins, he has some untapped potential that we haven't seen over the past couple of weeks without Chase. I'm taking this deal and I'm getting Diggs and Chase. If I'm trying to win a championship, number one, and number two, if I am like, if I already have a great record, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting at like 7-2 and I can lose a couple games if I have to, you're still going to have Diggs. You're still going to have Ayuk. Even though Ayuk, like, a step down next couple weeks, he's a little bit of a sell to me as well. But I could easily have said a lot about Ayuk being a sell. I'm okay with this deal.
Yeah, I'm okay with it because I'm looking at it as Higgins hasn't done a whole lot to maybe like, he's like, taking right over where Jamar Chase left off. He's not. He's had relatively quiet outings. But with Jamar Chase, I look at you're swapping Higgins for Chase. You're swapping Kupp for Diggs. I think you get both the better end of both deals so far this season. The way Diggs has been playing with Josh Allen, the offense is better in Buffalo. Kupp is good, but he's been he has the offense being bad working against him. And then Ayuk and Ingram. Ayuk is a much better asset. Ingram, I'm not even considering Ingram in this deal. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's the best.
Yeah,
the best offer to the side Diggs, Chase, and Ayuk. That's the better end of it.
I think even with Josh Allen's elbow issue, I think Diggs can still come through for you, right? It might not be as good, but I think Josh Allen will still be fine, and Diggs will still be fine. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Okay, great. All right, guys. We're gonna call it right here. We appreciate you guys. That was the buy sell episode. I hope you guys want your questions answered and kind of make sense of how we're feeling about these guys moving forward. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. If you could, subscribe and, follow the podcast on your whatever app you listen to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Spotify, wherever we see you guys tomorrow. We'll be back for our running back starts, our running back rankings tomorrow, quarterback rankings tomorrow. And we'll see you there at 9 a.m. Eastern time. See you later. Bye-bye.